Hello everyone, my name is Jean, but my friends call me Gene, my family call me by my middle name, so please feel comfortable calling me Gene or Jean, I answer to both. For Under Armour, I am the product operations professional and I work on the apparel and accessory side.
Hello everyone, my name is Morgan Miles. I go by Morgan. I work at UA, it's literally two people beside me, and I'm an apparel designer for a basketball and Curry brand. So specifically, I create all the basketball uniforms you see with the UA logo, and I do a lot of the women's basketball product that you see in the retail.
What's up, everybody? My name is Evan Banks. Call me Evan. I'm the product line manager at Under Armour, specifically Under Armour basketball and Curry brand. Been with the brand 5 years, multiple different roles, but love the role that we're in. Me and Morgan. Morgan's more of a design perspective. I have a creative perspective as well, but really just focusing on you guys, the consumer, the market, and the business.
Apparel, accessories, footwear, marketing, you typically have to build what's called a portfolio when you want to acquire a position like that. So starting with Evan, what was most helpful when it came to developing your portfolio and kind of showcasing your value to a big brand like Under Armour?
Yeah, I would say for me, it was not being afraid to take any opportunities. I had a real makeshift path here. Like I didn't go to design school. I wasn't, sketching. I loved apparel and sneakerhead as a kid, but I didn't know how to get there. So I would say where I am now and just things I worked on specifically at Under Armour, a lot of it in my day-to-day comes from reaching back all the way to about 19 to 20. Perspective, just knowing who you are, and then also just having a perspective and grit of, not really taking no for an answer and just trusting your gut and just taking that next opportunity. Because really that opportunity that you take is going to lead you to the next one. Yes, it's cliche, but I just met the athletic director here, Clyde, and it went back to my freshman year of school, how we connected. I'm 34. So just that one opportunity I took, which was a risk, really, even to now, plays a big part of who I am in relationship building.
What was most helpful was just leaning on my support system. I think that's another thing. I think when you build your portfolio, sometimes you can get in your head, you can do a comparison. It's always just relying on people. Obviously, when you rely on the support system, being open to listening as well, because I think sometimes you can be like, I know it all, I got it. But for perspective is it's valuable. So relying on the support system, listening to it, and implementing those things. Also, just building skills as well. Building presentation is very key. So when I was building my portfolio, just taking the extra effort to tailor my portfolio, I would do something differently when I sent it out to different places. So when I sent it to Under Armour, I made sure I included maybe the Under Armour aesthetic or some of the verbiage that they use, versus when I sent it out to other competitors, I would tailor it to that so it shows that you could still see my personality through my work, but it shows that I was considerate and that I went up and beyond to show that I wanted the position.
That's awesome. That's the key. That's a nugget right there. Tailoring your portfolio to essentially who you're applying for. Brother Gene, what's up?
Yeah, so for me, I would say what was key, I have 3 things. I'm trying not to be long-winded. I'll say starting off by being intentional. I'll explain why. I'll also say building a community and tapping into them. And then also internships. So for me, similar to Evan's story, I didn't come into the industry through traditional design school. I went through a program called Pencil that helped me carry through to where I'm at right now. And then with that, I built up a community with friends and other people that I networked with. Malcolm, who is a Pencil alumni just like myself. Just staying connected to them and making sure that we keeping each other accountable, and then being intentional in the way of making sure when you have certain connections, not to use them, but to tap into them. Yeah, I would say that's the bulk of what helped me get to where I'm at, building my portfolio to a spot to help me like, elevate.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that's my next question for all of you. And I'll start with you because I'm here now because I would ask, I mean, you said in relation to your portfolio, that it was incredibly important, but I was just going to ask how important were those internships / apprenticeships when you think about where you are today?
They were key. I mean, without, again, because I didn't go the traditional design school route, I leaned on pencil to get me to certain rooms and certain spaces. Pencil was based out of Portland, Oregon initially. They're now in Detroit. But once I found out about it, I took a leap. I applied to 2 classes. I got into them. And what's special about Pencil is they partner with different brands, which gives you this exposure. Fortunately for me, I got to work on the Nike side. I was on Nike team both times, and I got to go on campus. I got to meet people. I got to see people. I got to go into the Mia Hamm building, the Jordan building, like see these spots that the designers and all these people that we aspire to be working out of. So that fueled me, that kept me inspired. But yeah, Pencil really kept me aligned and helped me to get to where I'm at. Built up my portfolio using the projects that I went through Pencil with. And then as I'm applying to roles, similar to what Morgan mentioned, I tailored it specifically to the demographic. When you build your portfolio, I want to emphasize that you want to make projects that make sense, not only to create something for a person or some ideal consumer, but you want to solve a problem. At the end of the day, that's what these businesses are trying to do, like appeal to a consumer. So you find that consumer and you're trying to solve a problem for that said consumer. So just being intentional in that way, like I'm really big on that, moving with the purpose.
Absolutely. I can't add any more to what you mentioned about Pencil, just its impact and its role in my life, and I'll leave it there. I will ask Morgan the same question: how important were those? And when you think about your portfolio, how important were those internships / apprenticeships when you think about where you are today?
Yeah, so if it wasn't for an internship, I would have not known what I didn't like in the industry, which is really important because I went to school at SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, and they encourage you to take time off and work in the industry before you graduate so you can get a feel for what it's like before you actually step in the industry. So I took a semester off, went up to New York. I worked for this small-time designer. She owned her own collection. It was just her and one other intern, and I joined. I didn't work for a big name or anything. It was super small. She was not even in existence anymore. But because she was so small, I did everything. I worked, she had everything produced in New York. So I was in the factories day to day doing quality control, and then you would run to the sample maker, then you would run to the fabrics in the stores and trim stores, and this was all unpaid on top of that. So you're doing all these things, and what really drives me as a person is being intentional and sustainability is very close and like true to my heart and my values. And while working there, I saw, and I got to work, produce shows for Fashion Week and worked under, saw big names and all that type of stuff. And I just saw how unhealthy the industry was. I saw how I was in a room with models and we're eating food and the model director is saying like, she needs to go fix her face or she needs to eat less. And it's the contradiction of just being there, just like, it just didn't feel right in my spirit. So I left there like, I spent my junior year, I'm gonna graduate next year, like I spent all this time building this portfolio, doing this towards, this industry, and I don't wanna do it anymore. And then my parents worked in the science field when they told me not to go to art school, so I was like, and I gotta tell them that they were probably right. So then I actually caught myself, my best friend played, I was really passionate about going back to sustainability and textiles. So I went back to just like, what am I passionate about? And it was textiles. And I was like, textiles is the future of the industry. I feel like a lot of design's been done. If you're versed in fashion history, like you go back to the 1500th century, like things have been done, but textiles are the future. So and I was like, what industries would be testing that first, She was sportswear, medical, so I was like, let me start just diving into sportswear. And then that, all 3 years of my portfolio went in the trash can. I had to start over from scratch my last year. And then also I noticed what sparked the creation of some of my portfolio pieces was I was at my best friend, she played for Chapel Hill, and she played volleyball for Chapel Hill, and they were playing Georgia Tech at the time. And I was at her game, and I saw her fidgeting with her uniform. And I was like, oh, I wonder if I could re-engineer that so it could be distractions, to alleviate all the distractions and for her focus. And I had a portfolio class that next semester, and that was one of the pieces I created was following her team around, working with her team, creating a new textile that could be implemented in her uniform, and then Under Armour recruited me off of that piece.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
I would say that they were really, really important, but not necessary. And I'm saying that only because it's what you do with it. And I had 3 internships that had nothing to do with them. And even at the time, I didn't even realize it was an internship. So I was 19, I needed a summer job, and I was able to, get a job in the minor league system with the New York Yankees, which was near my house. I'm from New Jersey. Jersey. 609. So I was able to get an internship with them, and really it was just a runner in the clubhouse, doing anything possible, one, to stay relevant, and really to provide comfort for the players before and after the games. And it was like 10, 12-hour days, 25 hours a day. And no one could see why I would want to do that, but because of who I was growing up, loving sports and knowing numbers and stats and players, it made me mesh well in that system. I also took an internship with the New York Red Bull in marketing, and it was for more game day operations. So once again, I'm around a lot of players, setting up stuff, but really could use my relationship building skill set and getting in rooms that I technically shouldn't be in. And then that's how I actually got the internship for marketing. I was game day operations, and then I got into marketing. My third one was going back into school, was with a media company that doesn't exist now, but it's for youth sports. And I still write, but I wanted to be a more of a writer within sports at the time. And I took that internship, but I realized the structure wasn't for me. And I say all 3 of those because some way they still all play a factor into our portfolio. Whether we have to pitch the portfolio to the athlete, whether we have to think about the portfolio before it's even created for that athlete, or it's actually verifying why this needs to exist based on what's in your portfolio. And I've had things that failed in my portfolio that were really dope, super dope. And I've had things that existed that are still super dope. But it goes back to those opportunities and using who you are and your skill set, and going back to what I said the first time, trusting your gut. And then you're gonna look up and you realize that I work on this, I help influence this. It may not be traditional, but you're gonna look and say, I helped this, I worked on this, I thought about this, I did this. And then you're gonna start thinking about your portfolio.
So you guys, applied, knowledge is one thing, but applied knowledge is what's most important. You can learn everything under the sun, but if you don't know what to do with it, it's pointless. So I would follow up with a question, in terms of your many experiences and the skill sets and the knowledge base that you acquired in your early career, internships and apprenticeships. What do you feel, if you had to pinpoint one or a couple, what do you feel is the most marketable skill set that you developed in those years as an intern, as an apprentice, and why? When you think about, again, what you do today, because you said, everything you kind of learned in that process, you, in some way, shape, or fashion, use in your role today. So what would you, if you could give one or two, what would you say is the most?
Self-awareness and self-confidence are very big skills. Going back to my internship, I was me, the designer, and I was an intern, another intern. So there was times that she would be late and we would have to start a sales meeting. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. You just gotta get yourself together and be like, all right, we're gonna make some stuff up, and we're gonna make it work, and so I think in those situations you build confidence, because that happens on a day-to-day basis at work. They're like, hey, such and such is about to come through, can you put a presentation together, last minute, and you're like, yeah. It happens, you have to be able to just work on the fly, but if you have that self-confidence, you're able to do that a lot easier. And then I think going back to the self-awareness piece, you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror. You have to be self-aware of what you do great and what you don't do well as well. And I think that was a big component that I learned in my internships, whether there are certain skill sets, following up, being on time, because you don't just get a job and you're like, I'm gonna get it together when I get a job. No, if you're late for school, you're gonna be late for work. So, there's a lot of self-awareness of just developing, just understanding your habits, and how you go about doing those.
Yeah, Gene, so thank you this morning.
Yeah,
I'm about to say, we were in a similar, internship, apprenticeship experience. Talk about self-awareness. I was definitely early on, I knew that, I knew I was not a designer on design school levels.
Yeah.
So I had to, I had a choice to make. So I would pose the same question.
Piggybacking off of what Morgan just mentioned, for me, I know one of my skills that I pulled over the time is being multifaceted, being able to pivot, which I think Morgan was essentially summarized, being in or having these internships and having these opportunities, you get that exposure, you get to see a lot of things, and you need to be able to use those opportunities and see how they can apply to different areas, because our path isn't always straight and narrow. I know there's a saying, I think it's jack of all trades, master of none, right? But the whole saying is actually jack of all trades, master of none is still better than a master of none. And so that's something that I hold on to, I have these multiple skills and whatnot. And while I don't have one that I feel like I may have mastered, they can all apply to different areas. Our background is in design, and I'm familiar with it. Color design is home to me, is what speaks to me, but a lot of those skills are transferable, whether it's being able to speak in front of an audience and pitch, coming up with creative ideas for the consumer and trying to speak to that person. And also, in my current role, I'm not designing right now, but I'm still in contact with product and sometimes in contact with design and design leadership. So just being able to leverage those skills and pivot, it's not always a linear and straight path, but use your skills. Anything that you do, build up on it, continue to grow and be better. That's really what helped me to get to where I'm at.
So now here's the fun part, because you've all saying, listen to each one of these professionals talk about their personal skills and how, the early development stages, the nights in the gym basically help them get to where they are today. But now we're going to talk about the gym. So who in here is a basketball fan? You got any NBA fans in the house, whether it's college basketball, NBA basketball, okay? All right, well, why are you so shy? Playoffs is here. I am too. Big basketball fan. Didn't have the pleasure of going pro or anything like that, but I still play on the neighborhood. You catch me on the court if he wants to, he wants some run, he wants some comp. A big part of what I like about basketball, we have two professionals, one designer and one in marketing, right? In terms of the Under Armour basketball, right, and the Curry brand. What I really like about basketball are the lessons I learned in the process of playing the sport, where one can bring their individual skill set and contribute to a team. Just like any team sport, but especially in basketball, because it's a lot of X's and O's. And so in terms of the professional setting, and in a company like Under Armour and others, where the team aspect is so important, you work on a team to create these global products, that's where I want to bring it to. So let's take the Warriors, for example, right? And we all know that they're champions and they have championship DNA, but why, right? Why can they win with no Kevin Durant? They can win with a Kevin Durant, and they can win with an Andrew Wiggins. They can still get rings. Why? Because they developed a great system, right? Each person has a role in that system and can do it at a great high level, and everybody can benefit from that. So again, bringing the sport back into the corporate. How did and I see, if you don't know, Evan is wearing one of the more recent Steph Curry models, right? And I would ask, how did the Under Armour team or teams work together to develop the Curry brand's newest product? I think this is a Curry Flow 10.
Yeah, so this is a 9, but we're on 11 now, designed in 12. It's no different to me than being a former athlete, being in the locker room. You gotta know how to get your teammate at the best point, like their best moment. And you gotta know the flaws, you gotta know what they're great at. Morgan pointed that out as well. And sometimes you do gotta carry the load. I think for us, why we're in such a good spot, specifically with the Curry product, is that we have that chemistry. And we travel together. We sit in the office, in the room together, even if we don't have any meetings. Like, we intentionally do things together, and that's relationship building and bonding. So then when it comes to the business, it's easy to have those conversations. I know Morgan's personality, I know her taste, I know her work ethic. So when we have those conversations as a team, I don't have to go and figure out what's gonna get Morgan a tip or what's gonna get Morgan at her best to design the next best product. We're already having those conversations. I would say it's no different than being in sport, which is a huge reason why Under Armour hires former athletes, but they also hire former athletes with eye and taste of sport that may not be able to articulate it, and then we have people that can articulate it. It's really just using your skill set in the room and knowing what you're good at and what you're not, and really just continuing to bond.
It's more actually the same question. What in terms of development, maybe some of the latest basketball products, how do teams at the corporate level work in your opinion? Like how do they flow?
So, kind of going back, how kind of bridge it from like going to school into the industry is like when you're at school, right? You're the only designer. You're the marketing person, you're the tech designer, you're the graphic designer, you're the salesman, you're the seamstress, like you're everything. And then when you go into the space, you're only one thing. That was a slight adjustment. Is like you have to, I think being a team player, playing your role. So sometimes you gotta know how to when to stay in your lane and you know where you're the expert versus where someone else is the expert. So I think that's how you talk about a good team. That's how good teams function. Because I have an example of, that the basketball team, I've worked on multiple products while here. I'm sure we'll get into that later, but I started on volleyball, I did track and field, I did tennis, and then I eventually went to the basketball team. But I'll say one of those products I worked on, it was not a healthy chemistry. There wasn't, boundaries weren't respected, or people who were the experts in their field, or even if you bring an opinion, I think we collaborate very well. Like everyone's opinion matters. It's not like yes, but it's a yes and. So that mindset and that mentality is key to having on a team versus a team that we didn't flow that well. We didn't, and that there's a product in the market that I'm ready for it to exit out the market that didn't perform well because of that. And I beat myself up about it for so long, and I realized, like, reflecting back, being on a healthy team, I was able to pinpoint the reason why that product didn't execute the way it should have, and went back to the team chemistry.
Team chemistry. It's incredibly important, whether you're the Warriors, the Spurs, or anybody else who, when it comes to winning. What do you think when it comes to
Again, from my perspective, not currently designing any product, but as far as helping my teammates out and being a team player is, being there with whatever it is they need on my side, be more so, or kind of like manage managing product and helping the product team, like if it's coming to like dates and making sure that they're on time with certain deadlines and whatnot, so that our product can make it to market, make it to retail, make it to the consumer. So just making sure that we're on point so that the teammate can be on point. So what Evan said, just playing your role and helping your teammate be the best versions of themselves.
Thank you for that, because that's incredibly important. And when even while you're here, I'm sure you guys have like group projects. Yeah, you might work in silos or work, individually. But I learned later in life, like self-made is kind of a myth. You'll always need a team, whether it's here or anywhere else, especially if you want to be successful. It definitely takes, it takes a village, it takes a team, it takes a unit. And I'll leave it there. It is a Under Armour brand, but it was like a new brand identity, right, coming into the marketplace. Millions of people love Steph Curry, so I'm sure it wasn't a hard sell. But in terms of launching a new brand to a marketplace, like what are some of the challenges when it comes to launching and/or managing a new brand identity in today's kind of marketplace with everything going on?
You don't really have anything to stand on. You're creating something that is going to be the first installment, right? So you're hoping that it lands, you're hoping it sells well, you're hoping it's received well. When we started Curry Brand, it started with the footwear component, and apparel trailed behind, and there is a marketplace for it. But because footwear is a huge key in the sport, the apparel takes a little bit more curating, if you will. So myself, Morgan, Maurice on design, the hardest part for us was actually developing the concept. Where we are now, seamless, because we've created that installment, we had wins, we had losses, we have data to prove why we need or why we stay away and why we're doing what we're doing. But it was really, for me, it was really hard because you're waiting a year and a half after you create what you're looking at to go into market. And that is a very long, long time. And just to give a little background in the process, Morgan and I, in a year and a half, we would be in 3 to 4 different seasons. So that's 3 or 4 versions of the first version. So if the first version isn't successful, the 2 to 3 you have behind that you're now selling to the market, consumers, you're not gonna have to, piggyback on that. So I think for me going in was making sure, and this is not an easy task, I'm probably downplaying right now, but like it's not like we're thinking about going against Jordan, Nike, and Adidas every day. No matter what you see on IG, you guys are liking it and loving it, it hurts. But in a good way, because it motivates us to feel like, all right, what do we need to do? Do we feel secure what we have going on, and how can we learn from it? So now that we're, going into 24, 25, and we're currently in 23, we're in a really good spot. But I think knowing that what you're creating does not have any data behind it, and you have to sell this, that was probably the most challenging at first.
Ms. Morgan, from a design perspective, I definitely want to hear your perspective and your thoughts when it comes to, the creative side of, developing a new product, like something that did not exist before. It could be, Curry Brand or anything else in Under Armour that you've designed. What are some of the challenges of bringing that to market?
Yeah, so I would say, you look at the industry, right? We work in apparel. Apparel is overly saturated. Like, there's so many clothes, everybody turn on Instagram, somebody got a new clothing line, doing something, right? Like, everyone is doing it. That's the main part, right? And so it's creating something new in a market that's already overly saturated. And going back to what I said before, like designs, there's nothing new, right? And then going back, then you have basketball, you have culture, like, right? That's a sport that's heavily influenced by culture, is the culture. And that going back to what Evan pointed out, there's no data, we haven't proven our relevancy. Even though we have Steph Curry, people like, okay, like you can shoot threes, but what's your product looking like? You know what I'm saying? So It's figuring out like what is that identity, right? And Jordan is Jordan, like it has its identity, it has its heritage behind it, but Curry's not Jordan, you know? It's like figuring out what is his identity, what is his mark he's gonna leave on the world, and what does that translate aesthetically? So that is something that as designers, we're still just getting started. I know everyone's like, we're in a good spot. We still at the baby stages. Like we're still at the beginning stages. So it's really figuring out. We're still in that process stage but what's beautiful about this, there's no expectations, right? Like Jordan's at the highest, so there are people who already have this expectation, like you can't beat them. Like it's Jordan. They got all this. They got all that. So it's great for us because it's like we can just throw things at the wall, and if it fails, people expected us to fail. Like when we win, I'm not gonna say when we win, like people gonna be like, oh, they did that. Like so, yeah.
With that in mind, with the storytelling of the product, and more than what you mentioned about, culture being a real driving factor, especially at the consumer level, but everyone up here understanding the industry side of things, how important is the relationship between like hype and like product success? Because everything now is, the hype is, it's a machine. It's the hype machine, right? Now you gotta feed the beast, at least for certain products and for certain brands. But in Under Armour's case, is there a relationship there in terms of hype and product success? If so, how important is that?
I think hype is important. It's about what the hype is about. If you're creating hype in an unauthentic way, so you put a bunch of marketing dollars behind it, you're creating fake hype. You go on Instagram, you're like, oh, this is dope. It's like, nah, they just paid a whole bunch of money, so you can see that ad 100 times. They paid for all the likes. They got the bots doing the comment section. So I think it's all about authentic hype, right? And I think those two, there's a connection between product success and authentic hype, right? Because if the product is good, people are gonna continue to come back. They're gonna tell their friend, like, oh, have you tried these shorts? Have you tried these shoes? Like, you gotta get these. And especially with the generation, like the Gen Z that everyone's targeting and trying to get value from, they're authentic, right? Like all y'all are authentic. They gonna tell. I think it's gonna be harder. I think you're gonna see less of this kind of unauthentic hype of the influencers being like, yeah, I got this, and because you can tell when something's fake. You can tell when someone's like, oh, they got seeded that product, you can tell they're like, yeah, this is great, and it's purple, and I love it, right? Versus like when someone's here, they're like, yo, like that's dope, like you can tell. So authentic hype matters. The fake money paid for marketing schemes does not.
I think in the interest of time, I would ask each of you. We've all said a lot of gems here today, but obviously given who's in the audience, students at varying levels from freshman to senior, what advice, and show of hands who's in like art and design. I didn't ask that earlier. Okay. Also, most of you here, great. What advice would you offer students, who are obviously designing, building their portfolio, or possibly looking at creating new products to put in the marketplace, as we just discussed, like some of the challenges and benefits, associated with it. What advice would you offer these good people?
Continue to be curious and inquisitive. From when I went to school, it's not the same, right? I would have been thinking like you guys then, I would have looked crazy. So I would say, even if you don't have a plan, even if it's not ironed out, even if it's not perfect, one, continue to build a portfolio. And that's really tapping into like what Sean said about your network, and continue to build your network, because you never know where you're gonna be in life. You may have to rely on that, but then also being curious, and that's traveling and finding inspiration where you are. Like whenever we travel to a city for work, we make sure that we go out and we touch the city so we know. Like we went to Curry Camp, we made sure we did some of the things that were traditional, going to Golden Gate Bridge. Like I would encourage you guys to continue to be curious, because you guys are creative, you guys are designers, but also just raise questions, travel, and build your network.
I guess the advice I would give is to really take time for yourself and finding yourself, because like I landed essentially what I would call my dream job, but it's a job at the end of the day, so sometimes the boundaries can get muddled, or like some of those are things that landed. There's a bunch of passion projects that got shut down, crushed, and then that my soul was attached to it, and then that got crushed as well, you know, and I feel like you have to, like, finding yourself and finding your boundaries. So just like try to understand, like, just establishing boundaries would be my advice. Like, where are those things you're gonna give your all to, when you give your all to it, how do you like take a step back and let it go? So just establishing boundaries.
For me, I would say building a community, and then also going back to the portfolio piece. I think that's imperative in your portfolio. I think you need to challenge yourself and put products in there that are speaking to a consumer and like trying to solve a problem. I think it's all of us, you know, we get inspired by different things, and we want to, you know, put projects in there that are collaborations and things that are cool, or things that we think are cool, but we're not, when you're making these things, you're not making it for you. You're making it for someone or a business. So when I look at portfolios, like that's something that always catches my eye. Yeah, it's cool to see like a collaboration with this artist and doing that, but I'd much rather see a project that is related to someone in your family and solving a problem, and how a business can market that. I think those are the gems that, like, when I see those things, they stand out. And I think to a business, that'll stand out for them too, because that'll make them feel like they have an edge in the market and things like that. So look at yourself like a business, build your portfolio, build your circle. Yeah, that's it.
Round of applause, excuse me, for all three. Obviously gave you their insight, because yeah, I mean they were here earlier today, as they said, but you know, it took time obviously to talk to you and put you on game and, you know, pour into you. So if we did, do we have time for any Q&A or any questions?
Questions? Anybody have questions? Please go ahead.
I will gladly pass you the mic. I'm gonna start here and go around.
So my name is Aaron. I'm a fashion design major, or BCMA major, and my concentration is in fashion design. I had several questions, but I'll just like go with one. Yeah, I'm gonna go with one. So mine is more so on like the technical design side. So Morgan, I feel like you might have an answer to this. It was pretty much, how can you implement balance with athletic tech wear into like high-end design or like avant-garde design? And then I gave examples because I know some off the top, like brands like the Cold Wall, Acronym, Post-Archive Fashion. So yeah, more so like with the textile side of things, how can you implement that into design?
I'll start with the business standpoint. So one, you have to have money. So if you don't have, sometimes with creating product, we would like to go sometimes with the best and the latest technology, but sometimes we have to also, technology costs money. And it has to, I think that's the biggest thing about just technology in general, is like you want to do the latest and greatest, but can the consumer afford it, right? And especially in now times where some of those brands you named, they're not really brands for everyone, right? There's a certain type of like segment of society that can afford those things, right? But I think I would also, I think a challenge here is like, there's different ways of looking at technology. We always think about technology as the advancements of fabric or just advancements in general that, like I said, cost a bunch of money. But what are just like technology and just innovation in general can be just the smallest things, going back to the technical side, like the way we engineered our basketball short, or a volleyball short that I worked on was that, you know, the girls like rolling, but when they were rolling, they were having issues, like it would be too much fabric in an area, right? So that's just innovation, and can, like, in itself, is just like, I lowered that by an inch, and that provided comfort, and that didn't cost that much, you know, that didn't cost anything. So I think sometimes we can just get wrapped up into looking at the bigger brand and looking at this technology that, like I said, you have the resources to do so, but like, also look at innovation technology from just the smallest things, like the problems that people are neglecting on a day-to-day basis as well.
What strategies did you implement to make your apparel business stand out? Because I also have a clothing line too. It's called Roll B.
In terms of standing out, somewhat of a still unknown for us in a way. Two things that we did find out in terms of standing out is who is our biggest support system. And we were just talking about this in the back before it started, is about looking at it from a global perspective versus it being just a regional. So you have your own business, right? You may be booming in Asia and no one would know. And that's okay. I would say secondly, we had to really deep dive into if they touch a Nike product, what is going to be different when they touch our product? We looked into fabrics. And going back to like the first installment that I was referring to, is like we didn't have much wiggle room at the time, but we could build off of that. So I would say for us in terms of strategy and finding like who we are in terms of like how it's perceived, it would be fabric for sure, because that's what's going to separate out the gate for what we do, shorts and fleeces, right? And yeah, I forgot my first part of what I said. Oh, the region, right? And then also on the region. So we didn't have as much success at first in North America, but we had a lot of success in Asia. Why? Well, basketball's huge in Asia, Steph is huge in Asia, so it wasn't a loss, we just had to understand it, you know?
Yeah, I think going back to you having your own brand, I think one thing to keep in mind is, I think sometimes we can get caught up with standing out and we don't build a foundation. So focus on building that foundation first, and then like build it good, build it sustainably, build it that way, and then your consumer will find you, you know?
Today I am a alumni here at Bowie, but I also work here in the Entrepreneurship Innovation Center. And I don't know nothing about fashion. I'm told I dress like a mom, but each of you guys sound like you're entrepreneurs, and I believe as a creator you are an entrepreneur. Based off of that, for one, do you believe you're an entrepreneur? And two, how do you carry that entrepreneurship mindset into coming into work for a company like Under Armour? Like, how do you make sure that you're still being the creator that you are and bringing your entrepreneur mindsets or skills when it comes to the projects or the tasks that you were given, if that makes any sense?
I do consider myself an entrepreneur. I had to, going back to boundaries, I was saying, I came in with that strong mindset, like, I'm gonna do everything, like, hey, have y'all thought about this concept, marketing, have you done about this? And people are like, that is mine to worry about, not yours. So point that, like, when I go back to boundaries, I had to create my own business, my own small business outside of it to kind of exude my energy. So I wasn't having tension, but like going back to how do you create it, or how do you keep that mindset, is you'll eventually find a group or a community that appreciates it, especially, I was just consistent, like that's always been me, and that's where another piece of advice, like don't stop being you for anyone, that, you know, the first team I was with, like, didn't accept it, but I was still me, and sometimes you, like, when somebody doesn't accept it, like, you don't have to keep giving it, you know, like, you just have to learn how to pivot, like, keep it dormant, find another project, to keep you occupied in the time, but still, like, cause you still gotta build those skill sets up, just for when that, cause you don't know when your moment's gonna come. And now, Curry Brands it's like a startup within a big organization, and it's like 5 of us on the team, like, it's small, like, we are a small team, it's not Jordan Brand, we don't have our own building, we got a room, and it's like 5 of us. And
they be in that room.
Yeah.
I be like peeking, and they be focusing that jump. The door's locked, you need a key card to get in there. It's legit.
Yeah, it's like, so, this is very true. So now it's like, I'm glad I didn't give that up, you know, because now I was able to hold on to those skill sets, and now they're needed more than ever.
Yeah, I would say I'm also an entrepreneur at heart. I think the negative part of it is being so consumed in trying to establish myself here has taken away, which is self-worth. That's one. How do I bring that mentality? I think for our situation it's so different because we have to be scrappy. If we're not thinking like an entrepreneur, we're gonna get ate up in company. But personally, a lot of my friends are entrepreneurs. So because of my communication with them, what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, my mind is still in that way where I'm curious, I'm inquisitive. I'm gonna try to go around, which that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur. So like, yes, I am, but I've also done a good and a bad job of bringing it to work. I would encourage all of you guys to balance it to where you can bring it to your profession, but don't lose that juice, that hunger to do it personally, because it can happen.
My question is like, as Black creatives, how do you deal with like diversity and inclusiveness at Under Armour, and then incorporating that in your design?
When I first got here, I struggled a lot, because I was raised in the South, so I was used to like being the only Black one in the room. Then I went to SCAD in Atlanta, where it was a whole bunch of Black people, and like what you brought to the table mattered. It wasn't just like Morgan, the Black person. It was like Morgan's a designer. So I was like in this like spirit, and I came to Under Armour, and I was like, I felt like we went back in time, and I was like, what's happening? And one thing that I told myself, because growing up, I had to kind of conform into those spaces before, just to fit in and just to like, didn't want to cause any problems. But when I got to school in Atlanta, like I found myself, and like I found who I am, and I found my voice, and I told myself I was never going to compromise that ever again. So it's just I just go in that thing like just me, and how I do that is in an unapologetic way. We're in a transition in this world, right? Like we know, and what is the statistic, like 2050, 2060, like the majority is no longer going to be the minority, so you can feel that tension happening, and all I gotta say is ride the wave and just keep pushing. So I talk, like I used to be like, hi, my name's Morgan, and no, I don't talk like that anymore. Like I come into meetings and I talk just like this, and if you got a problem with it, we can talk offline. But because people have to learn that you are accepted in this space, and that you are allowed to be in this space, and this space is for you. I mean, a sportswear company where a majority of athletes are Black, like hello, like you can't tell me I can't talk like this and look like this in the room. And how I implement that in work is you could see some of those. I put Black people all in my presentations. Like they'll say like, oh, it's not diverse. I was like, I do not want to hear that from you. It's not diverse. It's brown shade. It's a light shade. This one's from France. This girl's from England. It's diverse. It's diverse. She's just Black. It's diverse. So it's intentionally putting those things out there. And like, if anybody has a problem, we have a conversation about it.
For me, I'm unapologetically like rooting for Black people, whatever and whenever I have the opportunity. As professionals, I think, like even for y'all, as you guys are getting ready to leave, for some of y'all leaving Bowie, when you get into your career, you gotta reach back, and whatever opportunity it is, like a lot of us don't know about these opportunities, and until you get to see someone that looks like you, that dresses like you, that talks like you in those spaces, you don't know that it's an opportunity. So yeah, that's something that I'm always gonna do, always gonna advocate for is Black and brown folks, because we're really not in these spaces where we're always consumers, but we don't get to be creators and collaborators and things. So I'm super passionate about that. I forgot the question. I want to add to when you are navigating spaces, going through this tension time, you can't do it alone. So finding a community, finding allies, just finding people who can root for you and advocate for you. Because I had to go through that where for the longest I felt like I was alone when I was getting resistance from leadership, and I had to pivot, and we have lots of little clubs at Under Armour you can join and stuff. Pivot, find people who saw me in a different light and invested in me and sponsored me through, who could advocate for me in the room as well.
My name is Jermaine. I'm a BCDMA major with a concentration in digital media. My question for you guys is, coming from a student and transitioning to the real world, how did you accept the realization that everybody in the job field that you're going into is not going to like your work, they're not going to value your work. So how do you somehow find drive and fuel to keep going?
Honestly, in school, like, SCAD was like nasty. Like, I would go in, I had a professor who, I had sewed this garment for 13 hours, and I sewed it it was like 16 off, like small, and she ripped it. She had her nails like as sharp as a seam ripper. She ripped that thing in half. It was like, oh, sorry, you saw what it is. I told you need to sew floss, please. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then like even in critiques, like it was brutal sometimes. So after going through that, prepared me for like I said, establish those boundaries. Like, okay, this is the product. This isn't me. They're not saying I'm ugly. I'm this. I'm that. Like this is just. I know it's an output of who I am, an expression of who I am. You have to learn not to take things personally. You gotta just know it's business at the end of the day. Everybody's not gonna see your perspective all the time. So you gotta just come to terms with those things. And when you come to terms with those things, it's easier to navigate. It's like, if you didn't like it, you didn't mess with it, that's cool. I still like it, at the end of the day. It's just not for this piece. Let me just take it home and do something else with it.
Yeah, I would say also, having a good, if I could go back and be in your shoes as a student going in the workforce, whatever it was, it's just having someone that can push me beyond what I'm thinking and what I'm saying right now. And it doesn't have to be an elder, it could be a peer. Sometimes like you don't really see you for who you really are.
What would you tell your younger self, like right before entering Under Armour specifically? What would you tell yourself to like make you more prepared or to help you keep going?
Tell myself it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like, because coming in, especially, I was right out of design school. I was like, I had created my senior thesis, so I done did it all, seen it all. So I was like, oh, we gonna do this, and we gonna do that, and we gonna do it this way. And people are like, who are you? Like, you need to learn our processes. You need to learn what we've done before. You need to learn our history. And just like, I would say that's why I was just like, slow down. It's okay. Like, and what's meant for you is meant for you at the end of the day. Like, it will come to you when it's meant to come to you. So just be present and just enjoy the journey.
Yeah, I would say exactly what she said, enjoy the journey. Be patient, but you also gotta be ready. Can't speak for Jean. Pretty sure we've gone through some things internally where job security was up. You may or may not know, but you gotta stay ready. So specifically for me, like I've had to make a jump in the past internally to get to the current team, but if I didn't prepare for it, being who I was, it wouldn't happen. So I would say if I could go back to my old self, be patient, watch people, listen, take notes, all of those things, but you also have to have a little bit of a dog in you. When it's time to show up, that you're ready to show up, because someone's gonna remember you and listen.